today we are here to talk about our friend, the pivot table, and why it's so important and why we use that in modeling. So let's get into it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen somehow. No, I don't know if I can share my screen while I'm recording. Oh, no, I can't. Here we go.
Yeah, you can.
I certainly
You
can.
got Zoom, bro.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Here we are. So I'm in our classic model that we've been using. And what I always do in the models when I first start, one of the first things I do is I always pull in the T12 into the same model file itself so we can easily access to it and we can link to it. It makes it a lot easier to trace and track everything back to the source, which is the T12 and the rent roll. And that's everything that we're building our assumptions and everything else off of in the model. So what we're here to talk about today, though, is basically pivot tables. And we're going to make something that looks something like this. And the reason why we want to basically bucket all of our T12 information into a table that looks like this is for a number of reasons. First of all, it makes it extremely easy to link into our scenarios tab. So we typically link directly into this tab from the pivoted expenses table that I'm about to show you how to build. At the same time, what it does is it shows you can go back to the T12 and figure out how we're bucketing everything. So if you disagree or you want to change something, or it also just prevents you from making mistakes. You're not gonna miss anything because everything is labeled, and I'll show you at the end how we're gonna double check that to make sure that everything that we wanted from the T12 ends up into our model itself. So with that,
yeah, I was just gonna add, because this T12 is pretty straightforward, but we look at some that are just goofy amounts of line items. So, and you'll see it as Marshall does it. It just makes it very easy to go line by item and bucket it the way you want to bucket it. And hopefully every time you analyze, you're bucketing things the same way. So your method of analysis stays consistent too. Take it away there, Marshall.
Yep, definitely. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start by labeling. We're going to go line by line, as Greg said, and we're going to label each individual line item so that we can pull it into our pivot table. So the way the pivot table, first of all, reads data is it will basically read everything that has rows and columns to it. So formatting is a little bit important. So you can see here in row 7, which I'm moving my cursor across, these are all the dates of all the different columns, and that's good. Every column needs a label. I guess for some reason the first one doesn't, but I'm not arguing with that. So the first thing we're going to do here is all the way to the very right is we're going to, and by the way, all the columns need to be attached to each other. You can't go out a space or go out 2 spaces and start writing stuff in. Everything has to be attached. So we will call this column here labels. So we're going to use this column to drop in all of our labels. So let's go now to our model to pick up the labels we need. We're going to go to the expenses. We're going to copy everything here. These are all of our different bucketed items. We're going to go back to our T12 and we're going to place them a few columns away from where you want to drop your actual labels, because we're going to use this just as a reference only. Now, as we paste these in, you'll notice that in the model itself, these items are actually not really labels, they're links. So what we want to do is when we copy and paste this over, we don't want the links, we just want the labels by themselves. So to put them in, go to paste special and make sure you're pasting them as values. That way you're not getting any of the equations that are there, you're just getting the words by themselves. Boom. So here we have, and as you can see in the top, these are basically just word items. They're no longer equations or anything else.
Yeah, I mean, and your calculator may vary. They may just be text. And you can just do a simple copy and paste.
Right, but it's important to remember you just need
just
the word. You just need the words, and that they're specific to you and what you're looking for.
That's right. So these are our bucket labels. And now what we're going to do is we're going to just go through each line item line by line. It doesn't matter how you select these for the label. You can go over to each one and copy and paste, or you can just write in the formula and just make it equal to this. It doesn't really matter how you do it, but it matters which one it is and where it's placed, and we'll show you why in a minute. So this first line item, advertising, cleaning and maintenance, let's call that turnover. Legal professional, that's legal. Repair turnover, that sounds like repairs and maintenance to me. supplies. And by the way, don't worry so much about getting everything exactly correct. I mean, sometimes you'll see line items that you don't know what to do with. Just use your best judgment, because no matter what, you want to make sure that those expenses are not falling through the cracks. Even if it's not in the correct bucket, you still want it accounted for. But do your best to try and figure out which one it is, and just use your best judgment. Supplies, my guess is repairs and maintenance. Miscellaneous, no idea. Let's put that in general admin. So you'll notice that I'm not going to label this line right here, and that's pretty important because we don't want to double count this. This is summing up all of these right here. You can see in the bottom right, 22,957, just as it says here. So we don't want to label this because otherwise the pivot table will grab this item as well, and we don't want it. Water and sewer is going to be water and sewer. Electric is going to be gas and electric. Total utilities, not going to label that because that's just a summation of this. So be really careful, again, not to double count. Insurance, that is insurance. Property taxes is going to be real estate taxes. Property management is going to be management fee. Not going to label this. That's total fixed expenses. This is another total item. We're not going to do it. So with that, we're done. So now what we're going to do to create our pivot table is you're going to go to the very top left of all the information you want. You're going to go across to all of the columns that you want to get selected, and you're going to go down to just to grab all of the labels. You don't need to go all the way to the bottom because we only care about the labels. So what you're going to do now is you're going to go to Insert. We're going to go to Insert, and then we're going to go to Pivot Table, and then just hit OK. So we've gotten to this, a new tab has popped up, and so now we need to figure out what to do, what information we want to create our pivot table. So I'm just going to start with some formatting. You'll notice, by the way, if you click outside of this pivot table, the bar on the right disappears, but if you click back into it, it'll show back up again. Now, the only things that we really want here, we want the total and we want the label. So let's select label and total, and boom, there we have it. We have all of our numbers here.
You can also drag them in there if you want them in a different spot. So if you'd
That's
like
right.
them to be columns instead of rows, you can drag it to that particular box.
That's right. And you also want to make sure this values here says sum of total.
Right.
Because we want everything to sort of sum up. It usually does it automatically, but sometimes you might have to do it on your own. So I'm just going to do a little bit of formatting here just to fix the numbers a little bit. We are going to go to, I like currency, no decimal places, no symbol. Boom. Makes it easy to read. So now we just need to double check to make sure that we got everything and that everything ties up. So the way that we do that is you can either come off to the side here and create a sum formula and then select this stuff. Make sure you don't grab the blank because that's basically counting all of the blanks where we did not label anything, and we don't want that. We only want our labels. So this sum is 88558. An even faster and easier way to get that same thing without, if you don't feel like putting a formula in, is you can just put your cursor over here and then select all of these. And if you look at the very bottom right of the screen, you'll see it says sum 88558. So now
Can you hover over that for just a second?
Yeah, so I'm talking about this number right here.
Perfect, thank you.
So you can see that. And that I use that all the time in Excel. It gives you, so if you just select stuff, you can always at the bottom, it'll give you average, count, and sum. It's a very easy way to sort of count things up without having to put in formulas if you just want to quickly check something. So again, so we have this 88558 number. So this is supposed to represent all of our expenses from the T12. So let's go back and double check that. We'll go back to the T12, into the total column, and we'll go all the way down, and sure enough, there is our 88558 for total expenses. If you're not getting the same number, it means you've mislabeled something, or you have either put a label in the wrong row, perhaps a total, or it means you've missed something. So go back and try again until you get those numbers to tick and tie. Sometimes it takes me a few tries. By the way, if you are trying and trying again, which is fine, make sure you're deleting each time you do it, because deleting the tab of the table you've made, because these tables do not automatically update themselves. So you'll have to you'll basically have to recreate the same tab again. So again, if there's a mistake, just delete it and then do it again. And again, the reason why we do it this way is because now it's super, super easy to go to our model in this case, and we can just make everything equal to what's in here. So you just go line by line and just drop them all in. The reason why we like these again is because it really reduces your likelihood of making a mistake. And it also makes everything super easy to link up into here. And then it also makes everything easy to check. So what you can do is make sure your total expenses, this is not going to equal because someone has put in some hard codes here that do not tie up. But you know what? Actually, just for the sake of this, let's go through. So boom, let's do advertising, contract services. We don't have any, so we're going to leave that as 0. Gas and electric, we are going to put that here. General and admin, we're going to put that there. Insurance, we are going to put that here. Legal, we're going to put that in. Real estate taxes, same thing. If it feels mundane, it means you're doing something right. Trash. we don't have any trash here. Let's put that as 0. And again, we're doing this just because we want to tie everything up to the T12. Management fee, I remember that was 0. I don't think it's showing up here, but let's just keep that at 0. Repairs and maintenance, that is going to be 6605. That was payroll, and I don't think we have a payroll, so let's leave that at 0. Repairs and maintenance, let's tie that to repairs and maintenance. Turnover, we're going to find turnover, water and sewer. We're going to water and sewer, and deposit placement reserve, we're going to do that to 0 because they don't have that. And there's our 88558 number. And again, if you wanted to go back and check that, maybe you forgot, just go back to the pivot table, select these, and you have your 88558, and that is how it is done.
Sweet. Thank you very much.
Well, now I'm interested in talking for a couple minutes now. So pivot table video, that's how you do pivot tables. But let's just talk about how this becomes useful immediately, because what this is showing is the gaps in this P&L that has been presented to us. And, some of the things for people that are just getting started, you'll notice the total expenses percentage is 30.73%. Even though, we generally don't look at expenses as a percentage of anything, that is extremely low. 2605 a unit for expenses is extremely low. So, there's definitely some gaps in this P&L that would throw alarm for us. And if they're using this expense to establish what they feel the purchase price is based on the cap rate, it's going to be well inflated because your NOI is going to be dramatically lower after you make an adjustment for what you think your expenses are going to be running. If in your market you're like, hey, we run it $4,500 a door, that purchase price, if you use that broker's cap rate, is going to go down significantly. So,
right.
I just want to add that.
So the reason why we do it this way, and the reason why we want to tie everything to the P&L, is because, and we're using this particular model because we can create different versions. And what we want to do is we want to iterate on their version. We don't want to create our own version out of scratch, because then it's very hard to understand why you put those numbers there, or why or how you did something. So what we like to do is we like to go over and we create a new version based off of the P&L. So in this case, we've increased advertising to 150. You can tell that we did it ourselves because it's not linking back to this, and it's not linking back to the T12. At the same time, for best practice, for making changes like this, we should put in a comment and say, including reasonable advertising cost assumption at 150 per door. And that way, when you go back to look at it, or if anyone else is going back to look at it, they can see that you made a change from the original. And if they want to understand why, they can read your comment, okay, including reasonable advertising costs, assumption 150 per door. And as Greg was saying, exactly, we're going to find out in this case in particular that these expenses are very, very low, and they would not be reasonable expenses for us if we were to run this property today.
Right, exactly. So, All right, cool. Thank you, Marshall. And just full disclosure, we went through this once and I'm like, oh man, we should have recorded that so that I could come back and look at it again. So we appreciate Marshall taking the time to go back and do it for Greg twice this time recording.
So if we seem well polished, you know why.
Yes, because
We are well polished.
All right, cool. Thank you.